I've had people literally step back from me with their hands up when I told them that I was bipolar. Carnivore. The moment I get off of it, the moment I eat processed garbage, I feel literal depression the next day. The world right now can be a little maddening. And I think it started with the food pyramid, is when people first started thinking the government has been lying to us. And it's lying. It's not, oh gosh, we made a mistake. We're in a moment of great awakening where people are starting to realize that they have been lied to by a leviathan that is so interconnected. It's really easy, especially if you're in the matrix, to sit there and say, gosh, I wish my life were this way. Gosh, I wish I could get over this. I wish I wasn't bipolar.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly. Welcome. Today we have with us our guest, Dr. David Schmitz, who I guess has a PhD in political science or American politics, which is quite interesting. But we're here to talk about, I guess, a success story. I mean, we may delve into that stuff. And you said you're inside of a bakery, so that's also has me intrigued. So why don't we start out with just you telling us a little about who you are?
My name is Dave Schmitz. I do have a PhD in American politics, but right now running a keto bakery and carnivore restaurant. And we're not as carnivore as we would like to be. I definitely bought this building because my wife makes, I think, the best low carb, sugar-free, gluten-free products in America personally. But I'm also not here to try to advertise. I truly had something strange happen to me, and it's something I was scared to talk about and tell people for a long time, just because telling anyone you're bipolar, I've had people literally step back from me with their hands up when I told them that I was bipolar. And so there's a stigma that goes along with being labeled something. And especially with the system that we're in, once you're labeled something like bipolar, you're labeled for life. And so to have, I think, found a way out of that using the carnivore diet to not be medicated anymore, after having 3 separate psychiatrists say you're going to be on lamotrigine, better known as Lamictal, for the rest of your life. There's something happened. Something happened. And I personally think that I starved out bacteria. And now I'm thinking maybe I starved out parasites as well. And that I'm wondering if maybe I wasn't bipolar, if maybe I had some form of like long form cat scratch fever or a parasite from something that was disrupting my brain.
Let me, before we go too far, so where are you say you're in a bakery, where are you guys located, just out of curiosity?
We are in Kingman, Arizona, the coolest town in America. I love Kingman.
I've been to Kingman.
Have you? Yeah.
I had a buddy of mine, and actually a real good friend, a former orthopedic surgery colleague who worked there for a period of time. And so I've been to Kingman a few times. In fact, I pulled an ER shift. I moonlighted in Kingman a few times, and not far from the hospital's a little In-N-Out burger. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but
right next to it.
Yeah, right there. So
yes, sir.
But anyway,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. So what I wanted to do is, for those people, because you said there's a stigma around bipolar disorder, and many people don't even know what it really means or what it is. I mean, it's some sort of mental health disorder. I don't know what it means. I mean, in general, it's, you kind of vacillate between depression and mania in many ways. But what does it mean practically to someone who's suffering from? What did it mean to you?
Well, and this is it. It's kind of, they say chemical imbalance. Well, what's the chemical imbalance? And I know that there's probably a lot of, probably incredible amounts of literature on it. But when you're just trying to get through the day to day, especially if you have a family like I do, you don't care. You're trying to mitigate the symptoms. You're trying to get those under control, and that's all you think about. That's all you worry about. And
so what? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how did it affect you? I mean, what was the day-to-day existence like? What were the problems you ran into?
Well, when I first started telling people, I said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this. I'm bipolar." I had way too many people go, yeah, I kind of do believe it. And so I think that I had symptoms, especially of mania, and a lot of that would be triggered by things like social media, like the news. The news is pretty gnarly, has been for about 10 years now, where so much of our reality is being flipped on its head. And I think it started with the food pyramid, is when people first started thinking, gosh, if the government has been lying to us, and it's lying, it's not, oh gosh, we made a mistake. I truly believe that there were people that have known all along that the system that we've been under has been kind of tweaked to feed the masses at the lowest possible price instead of dictate what's healthiest. And so there I was, surrounded by, I guess what you could say were triggers, and I would just delve into it. It was to a degree a dopamine response to read the news every day and get worked up about it. And I reached everything kind of reached critical mass in 2019, and I actually had what they call a bipolar episode. And I had just gotten, I was selling medical equipment. I was selling otoscopes and ophthalmoscopes on Amazon for almost a decade at the time. And Amazon kicked me off for good and wouldn't truly give me a good explanation as to why. I even sued them. I took them to court. They still didn't give me a real explanation as to why they kicked me off. I got in public spats over masking and just a lot of stuff was piling on top of itself. But and then I found out that my wife was pregnant again, and it was she's about to have our 7th child. Well, this was going to be our 5th, and it was the only pregnancy that we didn't really try for. And so I just had a lot of stresses that stacked up, and it came out as suspicious behavior. I was constantly suspicious of everything and everyone. We were living in Henderson, Nevada, outside Las Vegas, and October 1 had just happened a little over a year prior. The world right now can be a little maddening. If you're really plugged in and you're paying attention to the news, you're paying attention to what's going on, there's things that don't make sense. There's things that don't add up. And when you try to talk about it with people, it's a lot of times you're upsetting their schemas, their views of the world. And when you do that, and better than anyone, nothing upsets people worse than if you try to tell them about food. You can tell them about religion. They've already got that figured out. And people, Americans especially, I think, are really good about compartmentalizing things like religion and saying, well, yeah, you believe that, I'll believe this. When you talk about food, you're talking about somebody's mom. You're talking about their grandma. You're talking, it hits something extremely personal, I guess. And I think that living, like I said, we feel like we've been living in something of a matrix. And that compiled on itself, and I had a serious breakdown. And so my dad was a physician, and he lived in Henderson as well. He was like, you need to go talk to a psychiatrist. You've got to go talk to a psychiatrist. So I get on Google, and I'm looking up, trying to find the best psychiatrist. And like I said, October 1, it just happened a little over a year prior. So every psychiatrist in the Las Vegas metro area was busy. Let's put it that way. But I find a psychiatrist with great Google reviews, and a ton of them, just like nothing you'd ever seen. And I think, well, this is the guy. I got to go talk to this guy. So, and I don't even remember his name, but I go and I meet with him and fill out a questionnaire. I sit down with him for maybe 15 minutes. And this guy's just looking at my questionnaire. I can tell he's already has his mind made up as to what I've got. And so, I mean, it literally, I think, took him 5 minutes to look it over and was like, yeah, you have bipolar disorder. And I'm sitting there going, there's no way I have bipolar disorder. You know, I'm 30 some years old. How would I just now be finding out? That can't be. And so for the past, 5-6 years, I had been on lamotrigine, or like I said, better known as Lamictal. And what that does is it deadens the fight or flight reaction. So I go home and I take like 15 milligrams, some tiny little amount, and I had to literally lay down on the floor. It was like a religious experience. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Suddenly, my brain, I feel like I'm in high school again, instantly. And this is something I want to stress, is that I'm not here to say that modern medicine and Western medicine is bad. I needed that lamotrigine at the time, and I ended up taking that lamotrigine, and I slept for 2 weeks straight. So I go back to the psychiatrist, and I'm sitting down, and he says, "Oh, I have someone, studying under me. She's going to sit in with us if that's all right." So this girl is sitting there, beautiful girl, perfect 10. So, I'm sitting here like, this is one of the most important moments of my life, trying to figure out what's going on. And then there's this like model sitting next to me, and I'm feeling better. And I'm accepting that I'm bipolar, and I'm like, okay, this is good. This doctor is helping me. He's upping the dosage. And as we're leaving, she's like, hey, come in here to this little room. So we go into this itty bitty room, and she closes the door. And I'm like right here with her, and she pulls out a thing, and she goes, "Would you mind leaving a review for the doctor?" And immediately I'm like, "Oh, okay." So he's got these perfect 5-star reviews, but he's smart for how he gets them, and that stuck with me, but I didn't really question it too much. But every time I went back to him and I said, what about sleep? I was using marijuana at the time. What about marijuana? No, that's not a big deal. That's fine. You can do that. What about sleep? Well, as long as you're trying to get enough, you're fine. Now I didn't ask about sunlight. I didn't ask about food, but I'm asking him, what is a way I can get off of this? And he doesn't give it to me. He says, you just got to take this. I said, when do I get off this pill? He said, when you're in your grave. And that's, man, to go 30 some years and not think you need anything, and then suddenly be told, hey, you're going to be on this till you're in your grave. It's a mind F, man. And you're suddenly accepting something that talk about schema, that completely changes your view of the world and who you are. So I accepted it, but my wife, she had been cooking for our son, who has just about every dietary restriction in the book, and she'd been reading up on it, and she's like, hey, this keto thing is, and my parents as well were keto. And they're harping on me as well. You got to quit eating carbs. You got to get away from carbs. It causes inflammation in the brain, and it probably has a lot to do with what's going on. And thank God for my dad, harping on me constantly, and my wife. And so I started to try to go keto, and I saw a little bit of I was feeling better. And we decide to get away from the city, that maybe that will also help me. So we move out to Kingman, about an hour and a half out. And sure as the world, the amount of sunshine, getting outside more, all these things start kind of kind of mitigating my symptoms, and I'm getting along better with the kids. I'm getting along better with everyone. And then when this bakery came up for sale, we had saved up money and we thought, let's give this a try. She had been selling under the name Keto Carnivore on Etsy for a good while, and we had some of the top products on there. And so we thought, well, let's try it locally in a small town and just see how it goes. And there's a lot of retirees here in Kingman. And we thought, well, maybe, if there's a big enough diabetic population or celiac or anything like that people will, maybe they'll respond to it. And it's been better than we ever thought. And that's the truth. But so I'm up here all day now, and I have to take my lamotrigine. I've got to try to keep an even keel as best I can. And I start thinking, well, why don't I try carnivore? If I'm going to put it on the name of the building, somebody that works here needs to be carnivore. And so I just start eating, like at the end of the day, I would have leftover kielbasas on this roller. And so I thought, well, I'll just eat these at the end of every day, any leftover, and also have some eggs, maybe a little bacon. And so I started eating these gluten-free beef kielbasas from the kielbasa company out of San Antonio. And next thing you know, I am feeling way different. I'm feeling way different. I'm not getting upset by information that I don't like. I'm becoming unshakable in a lot of ways. And then after about 5 months of pure carnivore, I'm at Tractor Supply and I see fenbendazole goat dewormer on the shelf. And I think to myself, I used to dip tobacco. What if there's a preventative measure? I've been reading about ivermectin. I've been reading about fenbendazole. This stuff is in the news kind of constantly all of a sudden. I'm following Mary Bowden on Twitter, which if anybody's on X, you need to follow Mary Tally Bowden. She's amazing. And I'm thinking, man, maybe there's something to it. So I grab a bottle and I drink, I don't even know how much. I just took a swig, and then I take a swig the next day. And then on the third day, I come up to work and I completely forgot my meds, but I didn't realize it. And if anyone is suffering from serious mania like I was, you can feel it like in the air. You can hear it. It's like a freight train off in the distance. And as it's building up, as your anxiety is building up, you can almost hear it ringing in your ears. And I'll never forget, I called Danielle. It's 2 p.m. and that's about the time I take my second pill. And I called her. I said, Danielle, my wife, I said, I think I forgot it. And she said, well, that's really cool that you got through the whole day. She said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I've been all right. But I didn't stop taking it. I kept taking it. And maybe a week later, I forgot it again. And then I forgot it again. And then I told her, I said, I think I'm going to skip it. One day I just said, I'm gonna skip it today, this morning, take it before bed, make sure that I didn't want to be irresponsible about it. But I did, I skipped it. And then I skipped it again. And next thing you know, I've gone a week without it. And I'm kind of, it's scary. It's kind of scary because I can't always tell when I'm being manic and when I'm not. Like I'm anxious right now, and I get scared that my voice is going to sound manic, but in reality, I know mania, and I wasn't feeling it, and so here I am now, like seven, close to 8 months off of this drug that I was supposed to be taking into my grave, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a bacterial thing. I don't know if it was a parasitic issue, or if I am bipolar and I've just stuck to my guns well enough that it's not affecting me anymore. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, that's an awesome story. I mean, it's awesome to hear that you know had this disease that you have for the rest of your life. You're going to be on drugs for the rest of your life, and you make a couple changes, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. And of course, a physician probably had no clue, and probably. I mean, have you gone back to see the psychiatrist and say, "Hey, look, I'm in remission"? Has that occurred at all?
No, I don't. That guy kind of gave me the willies, and I hate to put it that way, but he did. And
So he had a bit of a predatory review process where he would just accost
yeah,
you with his secretary or whatever it is, force you to leave a review, right?
yes, sir. And like I said, I sold medical equipment on Amazon for a living. I understand reviews. I understand them very well, and I understand what kind of business that can bring in. And his place was packed, always packed. But that's again why he would give you 15 minutes and then prescribe you something and then tell you that he just redirected the rest of my life in 15 minutes. Here, this is for you the rest of your life. You know, the other day you made a clip on Twitter where you said, "Can I cuss? Am I allowed to cuss?"
Sure.
I'm quoting you.
Okay. Well,
You said doctors need to wake the fuck up, dude, and they do. They do, and it's serious. And as much, you know, same thing with Mary Bowden. You know, Texans love to talk. I lived in Texas longer than any other state. I've lived in 8 states my whole life. I lived in Texas longer than any other. I love Texas. I love it. But Texans try to put up this thing of freedom and liberty. Mary Bowden is proof that Texans are lacking in some of these areas. The fact that she is being reprimanded for just trying to do the right thing over and over again by the Texas Medical Board is absolute proof of that. And, you know, again, I love Arizona. But I think that we are in a moment, and this is why I'm so grateful that you had me on to even get to be a part of it. We're in a moment of great awakening where people are starting to realize that they have been lied to by a Leviathan that is so interconnected that we truly can't. It's like when they talk about how the human brain can't comprehend numbers beyond like 1 million or something like that, or like 2 million, whatever the number is. So whenever they pass these budgets in Congress and they say, "Oh, we're allotting such and such $1 billion for this," they get away with it because the human mind can't comprehend how much more 1 billion is than 1 million is insane, and we can't comprehend it. We're just animals. And then you get up into the trillions and forget about it. It's play money in our brains, in our minds. And so they tell us these things and we just kind of go along with it. And I think we're having a great awakening where we're realizing that some of these pharmaceutical companies, some of these big food corporations, the distribution of these items, all of this, they're working in tandem constantly. And Ian Carroll on X did a video recently showing, you know, vitamins and supplements, who owns what. And he found one supplement company at Kroger, was able to find one supplement company that was not owned by the same companies that own that weren't big pharma or big food. Everything was either owned by Kroger, by Bayer, by, you know, the same companies that are feeding you these processed foods are the ones that are saying, "Well, we'll help you along. Here's your supplements that'll help take care of anything that you're missing by eating our garbage," you know?
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly. Yeah, it's interesting because you referenced Dr. Mary Bowden. She's carnivore. Ian Carroll's also carnivore. I don't know if you know those things, but it's going to be interesting.
No,
I'm not familiar with both those folks. And Yeah, I mean, it's Pfizer owns pharmaceutical companies, Nestle's owns pharmaceutical companies. You see, like,
Yep.
I'm not pharmaceutical, supplement companies. And so you see all these supplements that are on the grocery shelves are owned by big food, big pharma anyway. So it's kind of like, it's a bit of a scam in my view. And then I've taken a fairly, and I get a lot of grief for this. I take a very negative view on a lot of supplements because I think most of them just are kind of predatory, like a lot of other things are. But let me go back to your story because, okay, so you get diagnosed 2019, have some sort of bipolar break, stuck on Lamictal, for lamotrigine for years and years, and you're going to do it for the rest of your life. You decide to go carnivore. You see improvement. You added the febendazole, one dose, a few doses. I'm just curious, and then you stay on carnivore. What was the totality of the treatment? Because some people will be asking about, was it the febendazole? Was it just a carnivore? Because I've seen a lot of people put bipolar in remission with just carnivore, and whether that was something, just happened to be there. So what are you doing today? I mean, how's things progress for you?
I feel great today, and I don't feel like I don't feel that weight on my shoulders any longer. But I was also, look, all of America is grappling with, so many of us are living what I think is a, like, it sounds dramatic, but I think we're living a culture of death. And you got to choose between being sedentary, being on a computer. Do you want to go out and live your life, or do you want to just get by? And so not only did I go carnivore, but I also went from working in a warehouse where I'm shipping stuff out, not talking to anyone, watching the news, listening to absolute garbage like Howard Stern while I work to keep myself entertained and tell myself that I'm happy. And now I work in a building where I meet people, new people, and see familiar faces every single day, people I truly care about. And I talk to people. I share oxygen with them. I share a room. I look them in the eye. I do these things that's been normal for humans to do since the Pleistocene epoch or epoch or whatever it's called. Humans were not supposed to live in these bubbles. Saying, we know that, like, cubicles are unnatural. Well, a lot of other stuff is unnatural too, including blue screens. And I went from living a life of death. Even though I had a family, I was still choosing to make wrong decisions. I was using marijuana. I was looking at pornography. I was doing all the things wrong. But on Lamictal, when you're on something that is truly abating your fight or flight, you're not connecting with people. And so the medicine they gave me, you could get on a computer, you could look at pornography. Those aren't people. It's just entertainment on a screen. And I hate to keep bringing that up. It's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I also know the numbers. I've seen the data on how many men are looking at that kind of stuff. I've seen the data on what people are eating, and we've got just an entire multiple generations living in the matrix. And so to what degree, when I bought this building and I started becoming a part of a community, to what degree of my is my health attributed to socialization and treating people the way I want to be treated, or better yet, treating people the way that I would treat Jesus Christ himself if he were in front of me? To what degree is it making the right food choices, eating foods that my body was evolved to eat, that the gut biome in my stomach is ready for and will keep me healthy? And to what degree is it also just I've started going to mass again, becoming religious, talking to God. In fact, none of it would have been possible for me to get better had I not truly started praying and giving, showing gratitude to God for what I did have. Because It's really easy, especially if you're in the matrix, to sit there and say, gosh, I wish my life were this way. Gosh, I wish I could get over this. I wish I wasn't bipolar. And instead I started saying, I have so much. And I started just showing gratitude to God on a daily basis, and like little things, just a nice sunny day, saying a little prayer and saying, Lord Jesus, thank you for this. Thank you for this day, And that was really, honest to God, what got the ball rolling for me. And I don't know why, but it was. And maybe that was more of a symptom of being healthy, was suddenly, people joke about RFK Jr. and getting fluoride out of the water, and the pineal gland, which people attribute to a sense of having a soul, that our brain allows for us to feel as though we are more than just flesh and bone. So maybe it was all working in tandem. I don't know, but that's what got me out of it, was getting away from blue screens, especially at night, especially things that were draped in sin, getting outside and being social with the community, feeling like I'm part of the community, which again has to feed stuff in the brain that is very ancient. And then on top of that, making certain that I stuck to carnivore. The moment I get off of it, the moment I eat processed garbage, I feel literal depression the next day. And I think that if I were to go a week of eating processed garbage, I think my mania would probably return. Does that mean that I'm bipolar? I don't know. But I do know that, and I don't mean to get real religious on you, but cleanliness is next to godliness. And if carbohydrates feed all the bad bacteria, if carbohydrates completely mess up my lymph nodes and my thyroid, and I can see it on my neck when I eat that stuff, I can see my thyroid just expand and try to cope. When you realize that parasites eat carbs and they thrive off carbs, I truly believe that eating meat for me was a way of cleansing my body, and in a weird roundabout way, I think it has also helped me cleanse my soul. And it sounds dramatic, but man, go from abating your fight or flight to the point where you don't really care about people. Everybody's an NPC in your world. Nobody talks about that. SSRIs are even worse. My second psychiatrist put me on Valium. Well, that was, oh my gosh, I was a monster, dude. I didn't care about anyone. I didn't care about anything. Just give me my next dopamine fix. I was a junkie. Valium made me an absolute junkie. And the notion that somehow these pills are going to lead us to peace and a sense of wellness. I needed that Lamictal the day he gave it to me. I needed it. I needed to be brought back down to earth. I needed the sleep, and I needed the hard reset. But in terms of it being a solution, a long-term solution, it's nothing. It is not a long-term solution. No pill, no SSRI, no Lamictal, none of that stuff is any kind of long-term solution if you're feeling constant depression and mania. And I don't mean to get on too big of a high horse. I'm not that kind of a doctor by any stretch, but again, this is where you and Dr. Bowden are so important in that you guys are doctors and you're on the front line and you're getting pushback. People hate you for it, but you're out here telling the God's honest truth about what will truly help people find peace.
Let me comment, just one thing you said that some people may say sounds really kind of bizarre is, you said when you eat carbs, you can feel your thyroid swell. And there was a recent study that came out published about a year ago, looking at low carb diets, putting hypothyroidism into remission. One of the findings they found, not only did the antibodies that go with Hashimoto's thyroiditis decrease dramatically, but the swelling in the thyroid went down. So there is something to that. So I don't discount what you're saying there, whereas other people might say, well, that sounds kind of nutty, but yeah, I mean, there's MRI evidence. They took MRIs and showed dramatically less swelling when they went low carb. So interesting to see that. One of the things that I have noticed in my time doing this, and when I see people treating all kinds of different diseases using diet, and particularly carnivore, is that people with conditions like yours, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but fat is fairly important in this sort of journey. And let me ask you about that. What does your diet look like? How much fat are you consuming? How do you get that? Maybe you could share that.
Well, we started buying cattle or cows by, the half cow from Alpine Ranch up in Reno, Nevada. They drive down to Las Vegas and deliver. And that was a big thing for me, because there was something different about that beef where I really wanted to eat it every day. It was not a slog. It was not trying to get through only eating meat. And so I love steak, but with 6 kids, it's not something I can do all day, or every day. I just can't. And so Danielle puts an attachment on her mixer, and she grinds up the chuck roast, the cross rib, the brisket even. And that's a good way for me to get a lot of fat that I would normally cut around. I didn't grow up on a lot of meat. And so gristle fat, it grosses me out. And hopefully I'll get to the point where I can just eat it like butter, but I'm not there yet. And so I do a lot of burgers. And I probably eat about 2.5 pounds of burger a day. Plus, if I feel like I want vitamins of some sort, I'll cook some eggs while I'm here at work. And then really, like I said, what I owe everything to the Kielbasa brand, to Kielbasas. I think that the giant amount of fat in those sausages was very healing. And I agree with you. I can tell if I haven't had enough fat in my diet for the day, because like I said, I know mania. I can feel it. I can tell that I'm not at 100% mentally. But there is also something very special about red meat, about beef. I can eat every meat there under the sun: bacon, poultry, any of it, eggs. And at the end of the day, I'll call Danielle and I'll say, "Hey, will you pull a pound of ground beef, get it under the water, and so that I can make myself some burgers when I get home, because I have to have it. I just have to have red meat." That's the truth.
So, I mean, obviously this has transformed your mental health. I mean, obviously it's been a huge thing. Have you noticed any other aspects that have changed in your health or your life since switching over to a carnivorous style of diet?
Yeah, no more back pain. And I know that so much of back pain is mental. And so I think that the high fat diet actually, not only is it going to help your joints, and I don't have joint pain anymore either. I feel, and it's cliche at this point, but I feel like I'm in my 20s. And when I was in my 20s, I think I felt like I was in my 40s. And that's the truth. And
how old are you now, just out of curiosity? You said you feel like you're in your 20s.
42. Well, I'll be 42 this year. I'll be 42 this year.
Okay. Yeah. So you're in your 40s and you feel like you're 20s. All right. Awesome.
Absolutely. I've never felt better in my whole life, in every way.
When you were diagnosed with bipolar, what were you eating at that time, by the way? Just out of curiosity.
I was trying to do high fat, low carb, but I was doing stuff like fat bombs that had, have carbs in them a lot of times. And I think that it was a good stepping stone. It was a good way to get started. But when I was in the throes of it really bad, I was also drinking beer. There's certain things you don't think about, well, if I have beer one day a week, surely that's not going to affect my mood for an entire week, or my mental health. You don't think along those lines. Nobody did. And so, yeah, I would try to do high fat, a lot of bacon and eggs, but I was still eating carbs. I was eating French fries. I was eating processed foods. And you go to Costco and get something that labeled keto. Well, you actually read the ingredients, and it might be high fat and lower carb, but you're still getting a lot of junk in there. Oftentimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just because it has a label on there doesn't mean you're getting a good product. And in fact, many cases, it's actually a sign to avoid, because it's like they're trying to pull you into their junk food. 7 kids, that's a lot of kids. I got 4. You almost got me doubled. How does that work with the nutrition at the house? I mean, are all your kids of an age where they're all at home? You got 7 kids running around at one time, and how do you feed them all?
Yeah, we homeschool, and so we feed them from home, and they are at the mercy of their parents' diet, which is pretty darn carnivore. We let them get snacks, we let them buy treats, but they have to earn the money and buy them themselves. And it's kind of like what you mentioned in your book with your niece, throwing a fit as you guys were throwing out these foods. You realize that we get people addicted to stuff at a young age. Sugar, I think Elon Musk recently said, well, technically sugar isn't poison. Maybe, but maybe it is. And when I see my kids literally, especially my daughter, one of my daughters, Johanna, first thing in the morning, she wants to know, can I have this piece of candy that my friend gave me this morning? She had a Fun Dip, and she's like, hey, can I have this yet? And we're like, not till you eat some real food. But it's tough. As a parent, it's tough because we're surrounded by it. We're in the matrix, and these kids, they're inundated with television, with just going to the grocery store. It's everywhere. And so to have to tell them no constantly isn't fun. But like I said, with my oldest, he has no other choice. And so that not only helped me get on this diet sort of in solidarity with him, but it has led us to realize that if we get everyone else kind of sort of on a similar diet, that we just have a calmer household. And right now they're killing it. They're doing it so well with school. And James went and got his food handler's license, and he makes chocolate pecans and chocolate almonds that we sell here. He bakes them, and he has found so much purpose just beyond, his usual schoolwork. And I think a lot of it, he used to give us so much trouble, and to have him suddenly be so not only so calm and collected, but also industrious, dude. I'm gonna get choked up, but it's cool.
Yeah, so. Let me ask you: have you had any negative experience from carnivore so far? Any sort of I just ask people: have there been any negative things?
No, I'd say the only negative things are people that don't want to hear that you're carnivore. And that's why I was saying that people take things so personal that all you have to do is tell them that you're carnivore, and you'll see people lash out and I think sometimes maybe it makes people insecure. There's a guy on X, Mark Eats Meathead. And I love his account. The guy's brilliant, and he does such a good job with the studies that he posts on X. And he said something the other day. He said, your diet is not a religion. And he's exactly right. Your diet isn't a religion, and you can't look at it that way. I think it's so easy to get neurotic about it. And so there are, I think, just like there's neurotic vegans that drive people crazy, I think there's some neurotic carnivores that can get a little bit to where it's it sounds like they're preaching. And Jesus was pretty clear that there's especially with food, you can't get too prideful. You gotta do what's right for you and your family, but pride shouldn't be a part of that. And so I think there are times where I run across people and I say, well, I run a carnivore restaurant, and they'll a little bit lash out, but maybe they came across people that were militant or that were treating it like a religion. And that's, again, dude, I got to hand it to you. The way that you're able to say, hey, do the best you can without being judgmental, I think that means so much to people. And I think it's part of the reason that you've taken off on X as well as these other platforms, is because there's a lot of folks out there that are either putting carnivore in their name and then telling people to go eat sourdough bread. There's a guy, his name is Carnivore something, and he's like, hey, have you tried sourdough bread? You can't do that, dude. I think it's kind of irresponsible. But then at the same time, you have folks that say, lion diet or nothing. You're either eating beef and drinking water like the Jordan Peterson, or else don't even try to say that you're carnivore. And I don't think that's right either. And so again, you and a few of these accounts like Meathead do such a good job of keeping it in perspective for folks that, again, have been living in a matrix for close to 100 years now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have a fairly defined definition of what it is, so because if somebody wants to use it for a therapeutic option, particularly if we're thinking about how do we research it, we want to have fairly well-defined definitions. But to say that that's what everybody has to do is also not correct. I mean, it's just like, this is what this means. Try this, and then you can adjust to your own, effect, titrate to effect, in many ways. But yeah, so I kind of have to walk both lines, saying, because I tell people, I don't care what you eat, eat what works for you, eat whatever's doing best for you, good for you. If it's working for you, great. Applause. I'm not here to recruit members to a cult or join a team or join a religion. I'm just like, this is a thing that I think can work very well for things like bipolar disorder and rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease and on and on and on. And so it's important to have some, because when you say I went carnivore and you say, what did you eat? And I say, well, I had sourdough and fruit and honey and all kinds of, and you're like, well, I don't, and it didn't work for me. And then you're like, well, I don't know if you actually did it. So there is some need for that. But again, at the same time, there's also, and I think most people in carnivore, and you do, there are those exceptions. There are people that are just overbearingly, rigid and sort of almost, they wear it as a badge in many ways. But I think most people are like, hey, just do what works for it. Happier, better. Whereas a lot of folks in the vegan community, because there's such a ethical component attached to it, they attach this moral superiority and, oh my gosh, how dare you even look at an egg because you're killing some poor harmless chicken or something like that. And you don't have that. You don't have that on carnivore. So hopefully we can keep it that way. And obviously you're always going to, when you start collecting groups of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, which we have now, there's always going to be a few people that are just a little out there. That's just the way it is. I mean, there's no group of any type that you cannot say that about. I mean, there's no religion, political side. I mean, as you know, the politics are probably even worse. You got some really crazy stuff going on there. So, because you said you have a PhD in American history, or American politics rather, but you don't do any of that. I mean, it's like you were medical sales and now running a bakery. So was that just, what did your life go the way you expected it to be? Or, that's kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, I didn't write it. Dr. Greg Murray, absolute genius, wrote this paper that is now just a monster of a paper and that was 14 years ago. But it's been cited so much. And we looked at evolutionary explanations for voting behavior. And I'm so blessed that he even put me on the paper, because he really did. He's the guy that did the grinding and the heavy lifting on that paper. But it was it was exciting, and I was certain that I was going to go get a job somewhere as a professor. I love it. I miss it. But I got my girlfriend pregnant, and I had been selling R.A. Bach otoscope ophthalmoscope sets on Amazon through college to med students that just needed to pass their clinicals. And my father had come up with Dr. Mom otoscopes, and that had kind of taken off. And he's like, hey, if they'll let you finish your dissertation, come move this way with us, and you can work for me, and you can buy some product off of me and sell it. He was done with R.A. Bach for the most part, because he was focusing on, he had just gotten Dr. Mom into Walmart, and this new thing called Amazon had come along. He's like, hey, maybe sell the R.A. Bach stuff on Amazon. So in order to just pay the bills and be able to support a family, I ditched, and Texas Tech Political Science was nice enough to let me finish the dissertation from afar. And so I finished it in Nevada, but I had been so far removed from everything, and I was making such good money that I taught briefly for like 2 semesters, I think, at University of Texas Permian Basin online. And I'm very grateful for that time, but it wasn't for me at the time. It really wasn't. And if I'm not in front of students, I'm getting zero fulfillment out of it. I felt like glorified grading. And not only that, but in that small amount of time, suddenly the books for these intro to poli-sci, the Bill of Rights wasn't in there. There was no Bill of Rights. It was written by some George W. Bush lackey and distributed to schools across Texas. And it didn't have the Bill of Rights wasn't even in there. It wasn't in the book. And so that kind of stuff, I tried to put it in the tests, and I didn't get exactly reprimanded, but they were like, hey, man, you need to talk more about identity. And my dissertation was on identity. I don't like identity. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of identity politics being in everything. And so I didn't go back to it. But then, it wasn't just but 3 years later that I got kicked off of Amazon. I was selling otoscope ophthalmoscope kits. And if you go on Amazon, you can see right now that people are still selling those kits, but they kept telling me, ophthalmoscopes are banned from Amazon. So I tried selling them I rebranded them as veterinary kits for gorillas. And that really, I sold like quite a few of these kits as gorilla kits, and that really upset them. So they shut me down. Yeah.
Goodness. We're just about out of time, unfortunately. It's been really fascinating. You did pique my curiosity. An evolutionary predictor for voting patterns. Can you in 2 minutes summarize that maybe?
Yeah, there's always been a question as to why presidents throughout history have been so much taller than the general population. And what Greg realized was, hey, let's have people draw their ideal national leader next to the typical citizen. And as well, we would interview people about how likely they were to run for office. And we found that taller people get more positive feedback to run for office. And then we also found that they would draw the ideal national leader just so much bigger than the typical citizen over and over again. And so power and size are somehow linked in the mind. And that's what we looked at. And real fast, I know you're a Thomas Massey fan, and Massey was talking some mad smack about political scientists. And I just want to say real fast that political science is absolutely a science, and it's needed, and it's awesome. And I just want to say that real quick. I even think there might be room for sociology in academics, and call me crazy, but as much as I love Massey, I didn't like seeing that.
He's just got an itch, obviously he's a contrarian and obviously a very hard line, I'm not wasting money type. It's interesting to see, I don't know. No, I'm not a political guy. I'm I mean, it's hard to live in today's world and not be affected and exposed to it, particularly if you spend a lot of time on social media, which I unfortunately have to do due to what I do. Anyway, well, Dave, I'm glad you're better. This is an awesome story. Keto, Carnivore Bakery.
KetoCarnivore.com. We ship nationally. And
yeah. Well, it looks like you guys got some good stuff that, a lot of desserts for those people that like those things. But anyway, good for you. Awesome story. I'm sure this will inspire some people. Thanks for doing it. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate you.